The little girl came out of nowhere, barefoot on the hot afternoon pavement, tears streaking her dusty cheeks as she ran straight toward the police station steps. Her small chest heaved, her arms shook, and her eyes were wide with fear that didn't belong to someone so young. People nearby froze as she clutched the railing, looking at the officers with desperation that silenced the street. Something was terribly wrong, and everyone could feel it in that bright, ordinary daytime moment that suddenly turned heavy. If you believe stories of kindness, second chances, and humanity still matter in this world, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Life Spark Stories. Your support helps these real, emotional stories reach more hearts. The officers noticed how her hands trembled as she tried to explain, words tumbling out between sobs. Her name was Arya, just 7 years old, wearing an oversized yellow dress stained with dirt. She kept pointing back toward the neighborhood streets, begging them to follow her home. It wasn't a prank or childish panic. It was raw fear mixed with a strange sense of responsibility, as if she was carrying something far bigger than herself. The midday sun followed them as they walked, Arya gripping the edge of one officer's uniform sleeve, afraid to let go. The streets were alive with noise, vendors calling out, cars passing, children playing. But Arya moved through it all like she was invisible to everyone except the officers beside her. Her steps slowed as they entered a quiet lane lined with cracked walls and faded doors. The air felt heavier there, as though the street itself knew what waited ahead. They reached a small, worn house at the end of the lane. The front door hung slightly open. Arya stopped suddenly, her body stiff, eyes filling again as she pointed inside. The officers exchanged a glance and stepped forward, calling out gently as they entered. The room was dim but warm with daylight leaking through a single window. That was when they saw it. On a thin mattress on the floor lay a woman, pale and unmoving. Around her were unpaid bills, empty medicine strips, and a half-filled glass of water. It was Arya's mother, Maribel, who had been fighting illness quietly, hiding it from neighbors, trying to stay strong for her daughter. The officers rushed to help, calling for medical assistance, doing everything they could while Arya stood frozen in the corner, hands clenched together, whispering prayers she barely understood. As paramedics arrived, the truth unfolded. Maribel had collapsed hours earlier while trying to prepare lunch. Arya had shaken her, cried, waited, and when she realized her mother wouldn't wake up, she did the bravest thing she knew. She ran. She didn't scream in the streets. She didn't beg strangers. She went to the one place she believed could save her mother. The house filled with quiet urgency. The officers stayed close to Arya, one kneeling to her level, making sure she wasn't alone as the paramedics worked. Outside, neighbors gathered, their faces changing from curiosity to sorrow as they understood what had nearly been lost. It was a miracle born from a child's courage that Maribel was still breathing when help arrived. Maribel survived. Days later, sunlight once again filled the small room as she rested, weak but alive, holding Arya's hand. The officers visited, not in uniform authority but in human gratitude. Arya's fear had turned into a soft, tired smile, the kind that comes after surviving something too big for words. What stayed with everyone wasn't just relief, but the painful realization of how close the world came to losing a mother because of silence, poverty, and pride. Just before the ending, please comment below where you're watching from and write one word that describes how this story made you feel. Near the end of that day, as the officers left the neighborhood, they looked back at the little house glowing in the afternoon light. They knew they would never forget Arya, the child who ran barefoot under the sun, carrying love heavier than fear. If this story touched your heart, please engage with this video, because every like, comment, and share reminds the world that compassion still saves lives, sometimes through the smallest hands.